It's just a rampage. It's just partying for years and me deconditioning physically. And I just kept this lifestyle going. Like the things that I got convicted for, I got counterfeiting money charge, forgery, counterfeiting money, identity theft, first-degree criminal trespassing, third-degree assault charges, harassment charges, multiple driving without a licenses, like driving with fictitious tags, driving with stolen tags. Boom, handcuffed, they got me. And I start crying and feeling heavy and start sweating. And I swear to you, the window was foggy. And I'm there and it smells like rain, Carrie. And then I feel this presence next to me and I'm like, Jesus, is that you? But like, that's what I want to say now. But no, but the presence of God, the Holy Spirit, the presence of the Lord was sitting there. The energy of it, the not physical, the spiritual was present next to me in a way that I could feel. And I was weeping and I was just like, I'm so sorry. And he's like, it's okay. It's okay.
All I really know about you is that you were a drug addict, a drug dealer, and you went to prison.
I sure did.
That's all I really know. So start me out, like, tell me about Dan. Like, tell me like what your youth looked like and how all this transpired.
Okay, Carrie Ann, thank you. What my youth looked like and how all this transpired is I think my story is a little bit different than a lot of people. I can't say that anybody's stories are exactly the same that are go through like the Department of Corrections and stuff, but I think mine is a little bit different in the fact that I grew up with my family. My parents are still together. I grew up in a Christian household. I went to a Christian school. Jesus was always a big presence in my life. And you know how in Proverbs it says, when you teach a kid when they're young and they grow up, they will not depart from it. I'm grateful for my parents and them showing me that because I didn't depart from it. I got quite a bit lost there for a minute, but I like my youth, I bounced back and forth between Christian schools here in Colorado Springs and public schools. That was a little bit chaotic, a little anxiety. I go from like a Christian school where it's a Christian school to like getting in fights at like the middle school I went to, which didn't happen often, but it was a little bit chaotic, a little bit stressful. I will tell you the one thing, like
were you a good kid or you a troubled kid?
I was a good kid, but like I was like both. I was good, but I like to be a little bit rebellious. Like great relationship with my dad and my mom. My mom always been a great nurturer, took care of me, praying with me. My dad took me fishing. My dad, gosh, he's awesome. He was a multiple state champion winning high school cross country coach. So like multiple state champions, Crystal Apple Teacher of the Year award, just very physically active. And I admire that, especially now because he still runs like 8 miles a day. And he's like, wow. Yeah.
So you had a good foundation.
I did. But you know what? One of the things I think that happened is I think that like just looking around me and seeing that, I felt like my dad was a lot to live up to. It's like no fault of his own. I just felt like I was just like, man, I would have just be like him and hang out with him. And then I didn't realize the work that took, and it was kind of discouraging.
Does he know that you felt that way?
He does now, but like, I don't think it was any fault because he took me everywhere, did everything, fishing all the time, everywhere. I was always with him and I loved it. And I think it was difficult when we kind of ended up like parting ways. I think it was around the time I was 13 or 14. I started getting into like heavy, like hardcore punk rock music. I still love heavy, hardcore punk rock music, but I just don't listen to the stuff that's as negative. Like I listen to like the Christian straight edge, like we don't do drugs and we lift each other up music for sure. But that wasn't what I was listening to here. And this is right around the time I found drugs. I found alcohol. Actually, like, remember like
13?
13. Like in middle school, remember the DARE program?
Yeah.
The DARE program didn't work very well. I love where their heart was with that, but what that did is it showed me what drugs looked like. I was like, this is cocaine, this is marijuana, this is...
Interesting.
Yeah, and but you know, one of the drugs that they didn't have there was ecstasy. And I was at a party with one of my friends, I think right before my freshman year, and like everybody was drinking and stuff, and I was nervous, and I was like Christian kid, and like, I'm not gonna drink, but I'd never heard of this ecstasy thing, and my buddy bought me a pill, and I took it, and I don't know, people argue about gateway drugs, but I fell into it then. That was the first thing I ever did at 13 years old.
You tried it at 13 years old. I haven't even tried a cigarette. That's crazy.
Because cigarettes are terrible. Nicotine's the hardest thing to quit. Let me just be real with you. Like it's
Yeah,
way
I've heard
like,
that.
oh, it's terrible. Yeah.
So who introduced you to ecstasy?
Just this party I was at, and there was like one of my buddies, like I won't say my boy's name on here, but he was with me for like the first time I tried everything except for meth. My other buddy was there for that, but and the thing is, the difference between him and me is he isn't an addict. He never like was like, oh, I need this. And with me, like alcohol was the thing I fell in love with. It got progressively worse because I really liked alcohol. Really liked alcohol. And then, my same buddy, I ended up going to the same school as him. My dad was a teacher at Wasson High School. Just so happened that he was transferring my freshman year to Coronado High School, and that's where I went.
Okay.
Yeah, so like I went there, I was like, cool, so I get to ride with my dad, but remember I told you how we were splitting? Like by the time I was drinking, like you'd think that like, hey dad, thanks for taking me to school. I'm gonna roll with you and do all this and that. That's not how it went. I started avoiding him because very quickly I'd be drinking in the mornings. And I didn't want him to smell the liquor on me. So when he tried to talk to me, I was just like, no, don't talk to me.
So
And
what age is that?
this is 14, 15. I'm drinking constantly by 14, 15 years old. Like I even had a fake
Tell
ID.
me why you were drinking.
I think at first I was drinking because when I was growing up, I didn't feel like I was good enough. I felt insecure. I was bashful. I was shy. And this drinking, all my friends around me, they were doing it. So like, it was like, this is how I can connect with them.
You felt like you would fit in more? when
Yeah,
you drank?
I felt like I'd fit in more. But what it turned into is I just started drinking every day. And to fit in more, I got a fake ID. We all made them, but I was the only one like had like the courage to go use the fake ID so that I could buy liquor for the whole high school when we'd have parties. So I'd go into the liquor store with like $400 or $500 and like they ID'd me once, they'd have specials for me. It made me feel good.
Don't you think so many teenagers feel that way?
I do.
They're insecure. You're
Mm-hmm.
you're getting into your skin. You're trying to figure out who you are. So I feel like most people, when I say, why did you start drugs or alcohol or
Yeah.
any of that stuff, vices in life, they say, oh, well, I was abused as a child. And
Yeah.
I didn't deal with the pain. But it was sheer, I wanted to fit in.
Wanted to fit in. Yeah.
Really?
And
So-
I'd love to
okay.
tell you that I was strong enough to where peer pressure didn't work on me and I didn't care what other people thought. But if I said that, I'd be lying.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how many years does this go on? All the way through high school? So to somebody, again, I've never even smoked a cigarette. Can you help me understand, like, and you can speak from just a physical level or a spiritual level, what is the hook with drugs? Like, you said you were just doing it because you just wanted to fit in, but meth?
Yeah.
It's pretty hardcore.
So I'm going to tell you where I think I was here. Where I was in my mind here and what was going on is that I tried to fit in so much. And
Okay.
I still didn't know if I fit in. So I was trying to find these things to help me fit in. And I'm getting to a point where I wanted to have these drugs. I wanted to be around this drug lifestyle because people around this lifestyle are perceived as tough.
You wanted to be tough.
I wanted to be tough. And if I don't know if somebody likes me, and if I start getting into this place where I started to get pretty aggressive, like fighting, if people are scared of me, that's good enough. They don't have to like me, but if they're afraid of me, I'm protected. So that was the wall that I had built up for myself to protect my insecurity.
Okay.
Is fear.
I think a lot of people have insecurity.
I
just
agree.
with different things. I think even as believers, like I have insecurities. Like we all have them. It's
Yeah.
How do we manage it, right?
Absolutely.
So you were managing it with drugs.
I was managing it with drugs.
And you're doing drugs and you're just loving the high and you love that you have this label.
Yeah, loving I have this label, and it progresses even further. So after I got done, after I left school, like I had that whole portion of that end of my junior year where I didn't have anything going on. So, and I wanted to keep getting high and drinking, but I wasn't going to work. So I started selling drugs. And I got to progress my craziness even further. They were calling me Crazy Dan at this point because I was aggressive. I'd fight anybody, anywhere, anytime. And this is, again, this reputation protected the scared
Right.
version of me. Like I will tell you, I could fight, but I was scared. Like I was scared. Like, I'm just going to be real with you.
Were you as big as you are today?
I was
back then?
I was pretty big back then, but when I deconditioned, I was still like, I'm about 245 right now. And back then, I deconditioned and was like, I'll show you some pictures when we're done. But like, I got a little bit like chunkier in the face, but I was still pretty big. It's just it was deconditioned. Like it was I was a shell. But high school, I was bench pressing like 380 pounds in my junior year, which I think is pretty good for a junior. But I was pretty big, I was scrappy, liked to fight.
So you had created quite an image.
Yes.
You're like the jacked guy. Don't mess with me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you start dealing, what are you dealing?
Meth.
Just meth.
Meth, little bit of like weed, marijuana, a little bit of cocaine, but I liked meth and I made more money on it. And because I could make more money with meth, I would stick with that because it helped me feed my meth addiction. I was a terrible drug dealer because I was drunk and I was sloppy and I ended up like getting into illegitimate repossessions, if you will, to help drug dealers so that I could feed my habit and also make me scary to people. So it was like this whole thing going on. So like the day that this started, I'm going to tell you, like, I know you said you've never smoked a cigarette before, but like there's certain things that if you do, like the first time you smoke a cigarette, the draws, you get this little nicotine buzz and it feels really good. And you're just like, oh, and then you smoke another one and it's like, oh, and then you smoke another one, it's like, eh. And you smoke, and it's like, meh. And then you have to smoke to be normal.
Right, to just maintain the addiction.
Yeah, and I had this on two sides of me. I had this for my addiction, but then I also ended up having this for the crazy stuff I was doing. Like crazy things stopped being so crazy because the first time I did something like really criminal and crazy, it was one of the buddies that I was selling with. He comes in the house and he's just like, man, he's mad, and I'm drinking and I'm looking. I'm like, what's up? Why are you so mad, homie? Like, what's good? And he looks, he's like, man, these fools over here, they owe me money, man. And we can't get more dope until they pay up because I don't have money. And I was like, who owes you money? And I flipped out. I said, get in the car, drive me over there right now, in this drunken frenzy. And so he drives me there. We pull up, but I don't even think I let his door shut. I get out of the car. I walk straight up to the door and just slam my steel toe boot right into the door, boot the door open, walk in. There's a couple sitting on the couch, and I go in there just with hellfire. I'm like, you have till tomorrow to pay my boy. We're taking that TV. And I look at him, I'm like, you see anything else you want? I was like, anything that we're taking doesn't come off of your bill. You still owe us. We're just taking this on general principle, homie. So, and then after, like we took that and we left, and like they didn't call the cops or anything. We didn't get in trouble. And I remember I was I was like shaky after from like the rage. And he looked at me, he was like, hey man, good looking out, homie. Like, man, way to get it, doorman. So they started calling me Doorman Dan because I kicked people's doors in.
What did people do that were sitting on the couch?
They eventually paid up because they were terrified. And it put people in a situation where, you know, granted, like part of me is like, it can come with that life. But the other part of me is like, nobody deserves to be afraid like that, you know?
But you were also building your image.
I was building my image.
No one was going to mess with you.
And no one was going to mess with me. And this was building more that wall of the insecurity. And it continued through that. So I started doing that for him and for other people. And like, I wouldn't even do it for money sometimes. I'd do it just because I wanted people not to just to think I was nuts.
You just wanted the adrenaline rush?
I wanted the adrenaline rush. But remember the cigarette thing? Like it got to a point where I was like, I need this adrenaline rush. And like, it got to a point like where it wasn't even crazy. I kick in the door, walk into someone's house. There's 5 people in there. I got 2 people doing this home invasion with me. And I'm like, all right, you guys look at the ground. Don't look at me. Go check the rooms. All right, everybody look at the ground. All your cell phones out of your pockets, put them in this bag, and we pop the batteries out and keep them on. Like, it was nuts.
I feel like I see that in movies.
It was just like it was in a movie.
Oh my God.
It was just like that. It was just so they started calling me Doorman Dan. And
how old are you at this time?
Gosh, starting to do that, I was 19. And I'll show you a picture. 18, 19. 18 when it started, 19 when it started to become a thing. Because around this time, he just, graduated. I got a job as a bouncer at a local bar, like a motorcycle club, hip hop bar. And like they'd have hip hop shows, but it was a lot of motorcycle club. And I ended up like doing business with like certain people there. And they, I don't know, both of the groups, like motorcycle clubs and rappers don't usually get along with each other so well. Sometimes they do. But like I made some friends there, and I made some people I could start doing business with. And this job was a 9-year cover up for me because I would drink more in an evening than I would make working in an evening. The cover up was I was selling drugs. This was for me to sell drugs because me selling dope from 6 to 8 p.m. until 4 in the morning, it just worked. And the place where I worked, they didn't care like how much I drank as long as I could do my job. But remember, I had meth to keep me on the whatever, not sober, but keep me functioning.
What kind of money are you making at the time? Like, is this a good lifestyle for you?
At this point, I'd be making $400 or $500 a day. It ended up getting to a point where I'd be making thousands sometimes a day. And then sometimes there'd be like, it was like not seasonal, but there'd be sometimes I was good, sometimes I was bad. Sometimes like one of my people would go to jail. So it wasn't consistent, but there were days like where, I mean, having thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, but friends of mine getting busted with $120,000 and a gun and pounds of dope, not throwing any names out there, but just like things like that happening.
Okay. So you're 19.
Yeah.
You're working at a local bar.
Local bar.
Okay, and now you're creating this drug community. You have a platform to sell your drugs. What happens next?
So I just, it's just a rampage. It's just partying for years and me deconditioning physically. And I just kept this lifestyle going. But like, I was so drunk, I was not a very good drug dealer. I was affiliated with a lot of different gangs, some prison gangs. Won't say any names, just because I feel like they wouldn't appreciate that. But there was, it started to get really crazy. I'm going to fast forward a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it started to get really crazy. Like my relationship with my parents isn't super great. I'm still working at this bar and
do they know the lifestyle you're living?
My parents?
Yes.
A little bit. Not the extreme
You're
of
still
it,
living
though.
at home?
No, actually, I ended up getting an apartment when I was 19 with an ex-girlfriend, and then ended up leaving her for another gal who I was in a 5-year relationship, very toxic, very revolved around drugs.
Yeah.
And I was a very bad. I am not what I was looking for in any sort of relationship at this point, because it was all around drugs, and I was very, 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 very selfish, and I had a reputation of being a drug dealer, and that's what I liked. I have drugs. People are scared of me. I handle business. So that whole thing I was insecure about, now the wall's even higher.
Like, you really created this label for yourself, and you were proud of the label. Where did God sit in your life at the time? Non-existent?
That's a great question. So where did God sit in my life at this time? God was still a little part of it. But the thing is I was selfish. It was all like, he can be my savior and that's good enough, and I can do anything I want and still get into heaven.
So you didn't have a relationship with him. You weren't really, were you praying at all?
I prayed a little bit, but it'd be like I'd hit somebody in the head with a bat and the cops would come, and then I'd pray that they wouldn't catch me. And so sometimes I'd still try to read the Bible, but then I started with one of the prison gangs. Like, I started getting involved with these guys, and they were like Odin, Thor, Asatru, they're like white supremacists, and they followed like Viking, Scandinavian, so I was like religion. And so I was like, I'm Christian, but I want to identify with this warrior group, and I actually still have one of the tattoos on me. And part of me is like, Dan, do you want to get this tattoo removed, or do you want to keep it as a reminder of where you came from? And I still don't know the answer to that yet. But I've been praying about it, and I haven't had the Holy Spirit tell me anything about getting rid of it. And I'm like, And it's 2 Thor hammers that says victory or Valhalla. And I don't believe in that, and I don't know.
Oh, give it time.
Give it time.
I'll tell you.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so God's just kind of not really there. You're praying for him to like save you from the messes that you're creating.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Yeah, and I'd pray that I wouldn't get in trouble, because I started getting in some pretty crazy stuff. These things can't last forever. So it started to get really bad, because there was a person that had got out of prison that came down here one day, and this was 2010 or 11, and with a couple of my other buddies knew him, and they were all affiliated with this certain gang. And this guy, he gets out and he's all like, hey, doorman, you know all the drug dealers in Colorado Springs, right? I was like, yeah, man, I sure do. So what he's like, well, here's what we're going to do. He's like, I'm coming down there tomorrow. We're going to go see them all. And what we're going to do, Dan, is we're going to give them a couple options. They're like, you can buy from us, or we're going to handle them right there. Like, and I'm sure you kind of go into detail what that means. And I was a little bit nervous. I was like, oh, the other part of me was like, this could be the new cigarette. It came down the next day, and this was one of the craziest days of my life. People were hurt, people that I was selling to, and granted it was drug dealing, but there were some people that I was cool with that we went, and it just was all bad, and I still feel like I had betrayed some of them a little bit. And Craziest day of my life. Turns out there were confidential informants involved with some of the stuff that we were doing, because one of the people that we went and took, I started selling to these people that were at this house of one of the drug dealers we went to. I'm not going to go into detail with what happened at that house, but there was these two people sitting there. And I was like, hey, I'm Dan, you're buying from me now. And they did. But then one day I remember, out of all the drunk...
This is all meth.
This is just meth, yeah. Eventually I started selling heroin too. I made a little bit of money off of it, but I didn't do it. I tried it a couple times. It made me sick. I'll get to the point where I started using IV here in a minute. I'm coming to that. I started using needles, but I'll get to that part here in a minute. Like it just still gets crazier.
Okay.
Yeah. But these two people, I started selling to them, and then they called me this one day, and they were like, Doorman, there's this person that wants to buy a bunch of meth from us. They want to pick up more than we're even comfortable getting from you. Can we just give you the phone number and just connect you and not be the middleman? I was like, absolutely. Yeah, so I ended up talking to this person 3 different times and sold to this person 3 different times. It turned out this person was Detective Kenneth Owens, the people that they had got in trouble and they had thrown me under the bus.
So it's a detective, though.
Yeah, it's a detective. They started building a case on me, probably because I was an aggressive drug dealing dummy that was just kind of out of control, and I was harming people often.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that they were building a case on me until 2012. One of my dear friends, he ended up actually passing a year and a half ago. He kind of fallen off, and he ended up passing from an accidental gunshot wound. I was going to meet up with him. He was my partner, and my drug dealing partner. And I ran out of drugs. I was going to the movies with my ex-girlfriend, and I was like, hey, bro, I need to come and pick something back up from you, and then I'll get you back tomorrow. Like, I just need something to get me through till tomorrow. So I go over. My ex-girlfriend's driving, and his girlfriend calls. And she's like, hey, park here when you get there. Like, okay. I was like, okay, cool. And she calls me 3 times to tell me where to park. And I ended up cussing her out and saying, you don't tell me where to park, and being kind of rude with her. And then I hung up. But it was weird that she did that. But I needed to get my drugs so bad that I didn't really think that maybe she's a confidential informant, because she was. And I go in. We park at, not where she says, we park in front of the barber shop. I go across the street, run in, grab whatever, and I go right back. As I'm going to get in the car, I get swarmed by sheriff deputies. Hugo, get on the ground. I'm like, oh. So I get on the ground, and I'm like, what do you guys got me for? Dangerous drugs. I was all like, I don't think dangerous drugs is a charge, buddy, but apparently it is, because I got my background check, and dangerous drugs distribution, manufacturing a Schedule II controlled substance, methamphetamine. I had 3 counts of distribution manufacturing with the detective. And then they got me for possession. This is the first time I went to jail as an adult. I did go to jail back in high school for 5 days because I got caught with a pair of nunchucks. But
who turned you in?
Several people turned me in. So there was this confidential informant. There was a person that was a confidential informant with one of the gangs I was selling with that was working against me, and apparently several other people. I know that in my paperwork, there are several numbers. They don't give you the name of the confidential informant. They give you numbers, and you kind of just have to figure that out on your own. But there were a few people that we got into some stuff even after this that, because I didn't stop here. This is not the end. This is me. Now I'm in trouble, and I'm going to continue being a drug dealer. They got me at a $56,000 bond. I went to the county jail here, and my parents bonded me out.
Okay, again, very naive question here.
Yeah.
When somebody posts bail, they don't get that money back?
They don't get that money back.
So your parents just spent $56,000 to get you out?
Oh, that's a good question. So when you get a bondsman, they do a percentage. You pay a percentage to the bondsman. The bondsman covers the money, but that's how the bondsmans make money. They cover that. But then if you don't go to court, that's when they send bounty hunters after you. Around the time I started using a needle is when it all comes crashing down. Because right now, the place where I was a bouncer at, the boss was like, you're bringing too much heat. He's like, you can't work here. I was like, I don't think I want to work here. So we had I guess it was a mutual, I stopped working. So now I was just selling drugs. And I kept going and doing crazier stuff. I ended up getting, over the next year and a half until 2014, I got another count of distribution manufacturing. Like the things that I got convicted for, I got counterfeiting money charge, forgery, counterfeiting money, identity theft, first degree criminal trespassing, third degree assault charges, harassment charges, multiple driving without a licenses, like driving with fictitious tags, driving with stolen tags. I got, 2 counts of robbery in 2014, March 9th. I was on the news for armed robbery.
Wow, you're making some good choices, Dan.
I know, right? I was just like, man, God, like, just get me out of trouble. Because in my mind, I'm like, there's a way I can manipulate this and get out of it. And that's a lie from the devil trying to steal, kill, and destroy is what's going on here. Yeah, I lost my apartment. I lost my job. And this is when it all started coming crashing down. I kept getting more charges. I'd have to show up for court. They'd take me into custody for a charge. And I ended up leaving some of the people I'd sold drugs to. I'd leave thousands of dollars and be like, hey, I have court. I'm going to call you if they take me into custody and you need to come and bond me right out. This happened 4 or 5 times. And then finally, my PO in late 2014, she called me and she was like, what are you doing? She's like, you're going to prison. You know that, right? I was like, well, no. She's like, you know what I need you to do for your safety and for the safety of societies? I need you to come and see me right now and turn yourself in. And we're going to take you into custody because you can't. And this is the first time I was ever disrespectful to this woman. I cussed her out and I said, come and get me. And then
How old are you at the time?
I was 28 or 29. Yeah, this is 2014.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I was never super paranoid on meth like a lot of people are. I think maybe because I drank a lot too. But at this point, I was paranoid. I had my friends calling and telling me that the bounty hunters are looking for me. They were showing up trying to find me because I had so many warrants.
Yeah, it was Doug. Or what's his name?
Dennis Blackwell.
No, who's the bounty hunter?
Will. Will was this
the
one.
dog.
Yeah, Dog didn't come and get me. Yeah, Dog didn't come and get me for this one. But no, this was Will and Steven from my buddy Dennis Blackwell. Me and Will we're actually like kind of tight now. Like me and the bounty hunters, we're cool. I see him. I talk to him on the phone here and there. Yeah, we're cool now. Yeah, Will plays basketball over at the church sometimes. Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah. But
so you turn yourself in.
Yeah, no, not this time. I didn't turn myself in this time. They asked me to, and I said, "Come and get me."
Oh, that's when you say "come and get
Yep,
me."
and the bounty hunters were after me, and so like, I tried it for a little while, staying at my parents' house, but they were like, "You can't stay here because you're nuts."
So they kind of abandon you.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to say they put up boundaries, which I know that were very, very hard for them.
That's good.
I had 2 pit bulls. July 23rd, 2014, I woke up. My mom called me on my cell phone and she said, your dogs got out. I love my dogs. And so she's like, well, we're looking for them. Like, come up and help. And I was like, okay, cool. So it was so hot that day and all the stuff in my system. And Carrie Ann, at this point in my using career, I was shaky from when I didn't drink. And I had slept the night before. So
you're like having withdrawal just from sleeping.
Just from sleeping. And I wake up, so I have a pint of 90 proof peppermint schnapps, and I drink the whole thing, usually like a good few chugs, drink the whole thing. That's what got me halfway right, because now that I can not shake, I can hit my vein with a big old shot of meth, and I hope that's not triggering for people, but that's what I would do.
That's your story.
That's my story, and I get that little rush, and I'm like, all right, I'm ready for the day. And so I had my ex go drop me off down the street from my parents' house. And I went up the alley and it's hot and I'm sweaty and I got my long bleach blonde dumb hair, like combat steel toe boots on. And I'm like, Tova Hammer. And I'm using my cute voice and whistling. And I go up and I'm like, I just make it up the alley. It's probably like 300 yards. Yeah. And I'm like, maybe they found him. So I go in the back door. I'm like, I'm going to go get something to drink, find the dog, say hi to my parents, because I'm not in snapcase mode. I'm happy because everything is kind of okay, except for that I'm wanted. And then I go in the back door and there's the bounty hunters sitting there. This was a whole setup. And I yelled. It was a setup. It was a whole setup.
Did he have your dogs?
I don't even know where they were. I think they were there somewhere, but didn't even know because I saw the bounty hunters. I yelled some cuss words. ran out, hopped the fence, and Carrie Ann, this is where I realized how deconditioned physically I had become, because I was athletic in high school, martial arts, all this stuff.
Yeah.
I go running down the alley, maybe make it 200 meters, and this dude's on my heels, and I'm like, I need to get away from him, and I don't know that I physically can. Maybe if I hop the fence. So I try to pivot, stop to hop the fence, but my boots don't have good traction, so I slide, and my hand gets torn up, my arm, I had to get this tattoo. You can see it kind of got some road rash going. Yeah, like this big scar right there. It tore me up. I hit the ground, boom, handcuffed. They got me, and I was turning purple. I was so out of breath. I was just sweaty, just a nasty, deconditioned, drug-addicted mess.
Whoa. So is this like when you hit bottom? You think?
This was probably it. That was as bottom as it's going to get for me. Yep. And
Did you go away to jail?
oh, yeah. And this time when I went to jail, they had a whole bunch of holds on me. They were like, you are not bonding this person out. You are holding him. They took me to the hospital first. I had to get all cleaned up. I had to get the rocks taken out of my hands. I had to get that sewn shut and fixed. Got to get it all wrapped up. And then I was in the county jail, and I was stuck. Carrie Ann, I had 3 really big, important surrenders in this part of my life. I have surrenders here and there when God starts doing work with me, but these are the 3 that God used to bring me back. And the first one was in the county jail. I'm in CJC in Colorado Springs, and a couple of my buddies are in there, and it's kind of cool, and I'm healing, and I got my head on straight. I'm not clouded, withdrawing from nicotine, and meth withdrawal is not that hard. You just eat a sandwich and you take a nap. Alcohol withdrawal, I was a little bit sick because I was a little bit shaky.
Yeah.
I was a little bit sick. Got through it in a few days, but I was in there, and it just everything, the reality struck me. I was just like, I am going to prison. Yeah, it's about time. You telling me? My goodness. Lord, thank you that I went to jail. Thank you that my parents set me up. Gosh, in Jesus' name. And so I was in there, and I was just like, I don't know what to do. So in a moment of desperation, like from my Christian school, one of the things that they taught us is the books of the Bible, front to back, like Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st, 2nd Samuel, 1st, 2nd Kings. I get caught up in the minor prophets, so that's why I'm going to stop right there. But like I know almost what the books are front to back, but I don't really know what's in it. Like I know I can tell you like certain ones, like I know what the Psalms are, and I know what like about Paul and the Gospels, but I didn't know where to find stuff. So in my desperation, I opened up one of the Gideon Bibles that they had in there. And I was like, God, I need you to talk to me. And I did a random desperation move. And it's a good thing he didn't take me to like Numbers or Deuteronomy or something where it's talking about, like the curses or like son of. And like, like when they're taking count of everybody. He took me to Psalm 18. And this was transformational for me. This was my first big surrender. Psalm 18 was written by King David when Saul was pursuing him. Mm-hmm. And it's the second longest psalm. So I'm just gonna give you a brief of what I'm gonna give you my version of it. So King David calls out to God. He said, God, I don't know what to do, but you've helped me before. I need you to help me. So at my point, I don't have my faith muscle built. So there's not like, hey, God, you've helped me before. I need you to help me. It's just, God, I'm desperate. I need you. And then it says that in this, like paraphrasing, giving you my version, God listens. He Hulk Hogan's it, and he says, "What'd you say, brother?" And then he's like, "I got your back, David." He steps to the edge of the precipice and listens. And then on the wings, depending on the version you're reading, the wings of a mighty angelic being or the wings of the wind, God comes down. Mm-hmm. And dark storm clouds block him. They block the radiant light of him, but there's bolts of lightning and hot coals of fire coming down. And God comes down in just this heat, having King David's back. And it says that at the blast of God's nostrils, he laid the foundations of the earth bare. When God shows up, God shows up. Right. And then it says he reaches down and he pulled me out of the deep waters and he set me in a place that was safe. That's basically like the first, that's like 30 verses right there out of like how long it is. So remember how I've been building this whole persona, this whole reputation? I start weeping bitterly.
In your jail cell?
I wasn't even in a cell. We were in bays. So all the other people that were like sold under me, there's a thing in jail where you don't show weakness. So I had to pull this blanket over my head Because if one of these dudes, especially somebody who's affiliated with some kind of gang or if it's back from prison, they see that and they come and check me on it, I'm going to have to go to the showers and we're going to have to fight. That's just how it is. So I pull the blanket over my head to kind of avoid this.
Okay.
And I'm like, start crying. And I'm like, God, can this be my story? And I was like, I'm not King David. Later, I come to find out that King David's a man after God's own heart. And I'm not a man after your heart, God. I'm a screw up, drug dealing, violent, aggressive, kidnapping, robbing, meth shooting snapcase. But I'm like, can this be my story? And God starts to show up. Shortly after that, I get out. And my grandma, she was such a pillar in helping me. She helped me through so much stuff. She passed last January, but she was there praying for me all the time. She loves Jesus. She passed it down to my dad. My dad passed it to me. My mom, my whole family loves Jesus.
You said something big there. You said God really starts showing up.
He starts showing up.
This is how he shows up through your grandmother?
Yeah, this is this is one of the first ways he starts showing up, through my grandmother and many other people. I get a call. My attorney, come to find out. So the three people in my case, we all had for what we had. I had two co-defendants, my two buddies. And if you have two co-defendants, the public defender's office cannot represent all three. It is a conflict of interest. So the court will appoint one person, a public defender, and the other two get court-appointed attorneys, which is like a step up.
Sure.
My court-appointed attorney lives across the street from my grandma. Well, that's crazy. And she starts talking to him and seeing all this stuff. So he talks to the judge and gets me taken out. Like he's like, hey, they're going to let me go to this 30-day inpatient rehab treatment. So I get out and they let me, and I go to this and I crush it. I do it. I want this. Like I'm surrendered, and part of me has changed. Not all of it, but enough to where God has my attention now, and I want to be sober, and I don't want to go to prison. I don't want to be about that life anymore. And so I go and I do this, and I start like working out again, and I can only do like 30 push-ups, and like it kills me. And so I'm mad at drugs because of how deconditioned I was, because being physically capable is something that I love. I love to be like, I'll get to what I do now with my physical stuff, but it's gone and I don't have it anymore. And I was mad. I get through this whole treatment. I start doing a lot of 12-step, a lot of different little recovery things, start working out a little bit. And I have some hope.
Are you sober at the time?
Sober, completely sober.
Okay.
July 23rd, 2014 was the last time I ever maladaptively coped with a substance.
Praise God.
Amen. But December 15th, 2014 comes, and I'm in front of the judge in Division 12, and he looks at me, and I'm like trying to sell myself, and I still don't know because I'm still fresh. And I was looking at 48 years. I was looking at 48 years in prison. And they were like, Dan, if you fight this, you're going to lose and you're going to prison for 48 years. I was like, what's the plea bargain? They're like, it's open. It's in the judge's hands. We're not going to give you a number. They're like, on the low side, it could be 6 years. I was like, oh, well, it's better than 48. So they kind of got me stuck. So I take the open plea and I go in front of the judge, and he looks at me and he says, Mr. Hugel, you have disrespected my court. You have failed to appear here many times. He's like, you're a terror to society, Mr. Hugel. He's like, yeah, you're looking at this time, but I'm going to give you more. He's like, I think that 10 to 12 years. He's like, matter of fact, about 12 years in the Department of Corrections, Mr. Hugel. But I'm going to leave it open for reconsideration. What the judge had done, I think, at that point was saw that there might be some change, but gave me enough rope to hang myself with. Because I went to prison from there. And
prison, this is not jail anymore.
This isn't jail. This is prison. Prison is pretty crazy. Prison.
Where physically is prison? Is it in Colorado?
Yeah, it's in Colorado. So it was a 2-month transport where I was on 23-1 lockdown, which means you get to come out for 1 hour and you're locked in your cell for 23 hours. I was at this place called DRDC. It's up in Denver, the diagnostic place where they decide what facility you're going to end up spending the next, foreseeable future at. And so I go to DRDC, and then something crazy happens. I have a second surrender, but this one, God shows up in the craziest way. And so I had a supernatural experience here. I go and I'm 23 and 1 lockdown and I'm sad and I'm depressed and I'm trying to like get my phone number list so I can call my ex-girlfriend who I've ended up not even being with, and which is for the better. And I'm calling my mom and my dad and like my grandma, and my family was there. That was my anchor at this point. They were my anchor. They were praying for me. They were there for me through this whole thing. I go in and like I was up there for like 3 weeks at this facility, like, you know, going and taking IQ tests and these kinds of tests. And they're looking at my violent, aggressive history and like this. And they're like, okay, we're going to find out where we're going to put you. And in the midst of this, like, they were like, hey, it's like 6 or 7 at night. They're like, hey, we have this church thing that you can come out for an hour and go to. I was like, okay, I would think I need this. So I get out of there and I go into it, and it's just in this little room, and it's like, everything's metal and it's really uncomfortable. It's concrete and metal and like little wire windows. It sucks. But God showed up. God showed up.
How does he show up?
Oh, I can't wait to tell you this part, because this is one of the craziest things that has ever happened to me. So they go in there and they do this little prayer circle, and they do just a little message, and they do a little altar call. They're like, if you want to give your life to Jesus, or if you want to recommit your life to Jesus, come up here. We're going to pray for you. So I go.
There's a prison ministry there.
Oh,
when
yeah.
you're there. Okay.
Oh, and I got to tell you, one of my buddies, Ryan Shank, Rebels Redemption Prison Ministry, I got to shout my boy out, because he actually just got moved from a place where he was more comfortable in Sterling to DRDC to help with his prison ministry. That's my boy up there. So if he ever hears this, that's what's up, homie. You know, for sure. But so yeah, they have the prison ministry in there, and I go and I do the whole prayer thing, and nothing spectacular happens. And I'm like, okay, cool, but I feel kind of good. And I got my little pamphlet, and I go back up to the 3rd story to my cell, and I shut the door because I'm locked down again. And I go in there and I sit on my bunk, metal, with a pad that's like an inch or 2, super uncomfortable. And I take a deep breath. And all of a sudden it just starts to get warm, and it gets humid, and then it starts to smell like rain. And I'm like, whoa, hold on, what's going on? And I start crying and feeling heavy and start sweating, and I swear to you, the window was foggy. And I'm there, and it smells like rain, Carrie. And then I feel this presence next to me, and I'm like, Jesus, is that you? But like, that's what I want to say now. But no, but the presence of God, the Holy Spirit, the presence of the Lord was sitting there. The energy of it, not physical, the spiritual was present next to me in a way that I could feel. And I was weeping, and I was just like, I'm so sorry. And he's like, it's okay. It's okay. And I was like, what is this going to be, like a multiple year seminary? He's like, yeah. I was like, what do I do? How do I do this? Like, he's like, don't worry, son, I'm with you. I know it was him. And in my spirit, he was like, son, I'm with you. He's like, it's okay. He's like, don't be afraid. And so that changed. I was still like he said, don't be afraid. And I'm not, if I told you that I wasn't still a little bit afraid, that like I'd be lying. But it gave me peace. And I was like, okay, what do you need me to do? Here I am. Like straight Elijah, like send me. But like it was like send me. But you know, like I was trying. I was like, God, help my unbelief. You know. But this was the craziest, most supernatural thing that has ever happened to me. Personally, I had this moment with God, and from there I started reading, getting back into my word, and I ended up at Bent County Correctional Facility. It's about 90 miles east of Pueblo, where Bent's old fort's at. You know what I'm talking about? Los Animas. Yeah. God put a spiritual mentor in my life in there. So I'm talking to my parents, my grandma. They're praying for me. They're helping me. But there was a gentleman named Roger Cullen in there, and he'd been down for quite some time. I'm not going to get into his story, but he got out. I think it's 2019, 2020, he's up in Denver now, but he became a spiritual mentor for me in there. He showed me, he called me on stuff, he helped me, he'd do Bible studies every couple times. The Holy Spirit showed up mightily through him, and I ended up actually being celled up with him in a 4-man cubicle, and it was probably the most peaceful thing in the world. So I went to Bible studies with him in prison in there. I went to some 12-step recovery style meetings. I worked out a lot. This is where fitness made its comeback in my life. So I'm working out with gang members, and then this dude shows up. And he's like, you ever heard of CrossFit? I was all like, I've heard of it, but I've never done it. So he started doing these crazy like CrossFit style workouts, but it's like prison yard. So like we found a community and like a camaraderie in that. Yeah, for sure. And that goes into like the organization that we have now. Like we'll get to that part, but I found that. So like God gave me this gift of this thing to help me rebuild my confidence. And what I didn't know, Carrie Ann, that was happening during this is that part of me with the walls that were so high, these walls were crumbling and they're coming down, and I'm starting to find true confidence, and these walls are crumbling, and it's erasing this part of me that doesn't feel so good about myself. Slowly. People ask me, they're like, did you have a moment where you just decided? No, I can't tell you that I did. I think it was a slow process, and then all of a sudden it happened. I ended up getting baptized in 2015, I believe August 2015, in prison. It was great. We were in this gym, and like they got this trough, and his Pastor Russ from Trinidad's up there with his wife. I was like, Pastor Russ, I want you to baptize me. And like we're up there, like we're going behind this like gate thing and like changing clothes, and it's like it would have been super awkward, but I was getting baptized and I was declaring that Jesus, like I was like, no, I'm outwardly declaring, like not only you're not just some little piece of my Savior anymore, like I had mentioned in the beginning of my story, like you're my Lord now, and not perfectly, and I still screw things up all the time, but I'm getting closer to him, and it's okay if I screw things up because he's like, there's grace to it, and so I started getting my head back on straight and finding this confidence, but then they ended up breaking our whole unit up. They broke all of Unit 2 up and moved us to the other side of the yard. It was a little bit nicer, and it was like brighter. I was like, oh, this is cool. And then like it was like March 7th. I remember I woke up in the morning.
Is this going to be your third God moment?
No, the third God moment is coming very soon. It's like right after this. Yeah, the third God moment. Yeah, so here it is. So like I'm a prayer warrior in the church there. I'm like my mom called me, and we had like a family member. She's like, oh, I got cancer and this. And we had like 8 dudes crammed in this little cell, holding hands, praying, and God healed her. God healed her outside of prison. Like I will tell you, there's this place called Every Home for Christ, the Jericho Center. And I go to this place because they have these little grottos. It's on the north side of the Springs. They have these little grottos, and I go in there to pray probably once a week because it has the same feel of being in a prison cell. And that might sound weird, but it feels comfortable to me. It feels like
really cool. I don't think that's weird. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it's where the Spirit shows up for me. Yeah, so I go there all the time. Like last week they were closed for an event, but I show up, I got my little Bible, and I'm going to go in there, and I got the little communion, and you can get a little coffee, and I go in there, I hit my knees right on front of the chair. Oh, love this place. But that's where I go. But it was like March, this was 2016, so almost a year and a half into my being in there. I wake up, successful people are like, oh, I wake up at 5 a.m. and I do this. I think we give too much power to morning people, but that could just be me having let's go for sure. Yeah. No, I think that if I want to stay up until 11 at night and then wake up at 7 or 8, that should be perfectly acceptable. But in prison, I stayed up reading books till like 2 in the morning and woke up at like 9 or 10. So when I hear at 7, 8 a.m., I hear, Hugo, pack it up. Like I go back down, I hit the little button. I'm like, what do you mean pack it up? Like I just woke up. He's like, no, he's like, come down and get one of our buckets, pack your stuff. You're leaving the facility. I'm like, okay. So I go pack it up, and Brother Rob's down there, and I was all like, hey, the judge said reconsideration. I don't know. Nobody told me anything. So he takes me back into our little prayer room. One of my brothers in the church over there, he got out a couple years ago too. And he puts his hands on me and he prays. He's like, God, put a spirit of protection over Dan. And may your will be done with what's going to happen. And I had a peace. And then they brought me back to Colorado Springs. And then so I remember I get to CJC. I hate that place, the county jail here, Carrie Ann. I'm just going to say that. Now I'm going to continue with the story. That place, yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible. They put me in one of the general population units, and I'm doing my workout, and it's hard because I'm like looking down at these guys like I'm back from prison. Like I am in this whole system, and there's dudes coming down off heroin, crying on the phone, asking to get bonded out. And I'm like, man, I used to be kind of in that spot. And I'm like, I kind of want to tell him like, hey man, it could be a lot worse, but like, I'll just let him have his process. You know, we started doing little prayer groups at the tables in there. And one of my buddies from a different facility, he came in and I got him on, and we started praying and reading the Bible and working out. And that's just what is around me in my life now, starting and looking back. Like prayer, Bible, physical fitness is something that's always around me now. And I love it. But I go in there, and I look at, they have these kiosks in the county jail, and I get on the kiosk and I'm like, okay, where's my court date? So my court date's for the next day. So I go, and they wake you up at 4 a.m, and you get handcuffed, and they cram you down in these little vans, and it takes you a couple hours, the whole process. They take you to the courthouse downtown, and I'm there, and I'm in this gross holding cell, and I don't have court. I'm like, okay. So they take me back that evening. I look on the kiosk and same thing the next day. I go in, but then there's a court date, but then there's no court. I didn't have a court date again. So I go back and there's like nothing on the kiosk. Like you always have something going on the kiosk. And so I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. So I call my mom. I'm like, Mom, like, can you get a hold of my attorney? So he comes in and sees me and he's like, why are you here? I'm like, what do you mean? Why am I here? He's like, did you get more charges? I was like, I could have. We both know that's very possible because what I did not get caught for, there's like 99.9. I'd be in prison for 2 million years, you know? So I remembered though, every time I've been to jail a lot, every time they bring you on a new charge, they do a DNA swab in your mouth and they fingerprint you. They didn't do that. So I'm like, hey, they didn't do that. So he's like, well, I don't know. I don't know that the judge even signed a writ to bring you back. So I don't know why you're here. And I still to this day don't know. To my understanding, the judge did not sign a writ to bring me back. But I will tell you this is God shows up again because he's like, let's see if we can do your reconsideration while you're here that I put in for. It's the 35B. I was like, cool, let's see if it works. So I go in front of the judge. This is like 2 weeks later. And he opens this thing up and he's like, I don't know why I ever said I'd reconsider this. And I was like, oh, that sucks. And I went back and this is my third surrender. This is the part of me where because you know what surrender is to me? How I define surrender is there's something of value I'm holding on to. That can be anger, that can be fear, that could be something, but it's something of that I value. And I valued fear at this point because it was kind of like a safety. But at this point, this last one, Carrie, I let go of the fear. I let go of it. I gave up control of this fear. I surrendered it. I gave something of value up. And this was all I had left of value that was keeping me and God.
What was the surrender?
The surrender was I gave up. I was like, God, if I need to be in prison for as long as you need me to, I accept that. Because there was a little part of me, this fear of wanting my reconsideration. And I was like, if you need me to be here, I trust you. I mean, your will be done. And I truly meant that. And that wasn't, it took me 2 weeks to get to that point. It was me fighting and reading and bringing stuff before God and scripture. And hey, your word here says in this. And then I was just like, you know what? I trust you. When I can let go of my ego and let go of my fear. And so now, Carrie, and remember those walls that were coming down?
Yeah.
Razed to the ground, leveled, gone. And that little part of me that didn't feel like I was good enough was crushed. I'm not saying confidence was being built in its place yet, but I'm saying that I'm new now. I'm new. And through all of this, there's some new creation that's happening. Because I go back in front of the judge now, a couple weeks later, after my surrender. And I don't go in front of the judge. They take me into a holding cell with the DA. The DA, the district attorney, is the person that is the representative of the people, the person that will fight for your incarceration. So if I have my attorney, this is the attorney that's trying to fight the other side of it. And he looks at me and he says, Mr. Hugel, I can tell you've changed. He's like, I don't know if I believe some of the stuff about becoming an addictions counselor and all that. So I was like, I don't know about that, but I can see that you've changed. And I was like,
just on your countenance, you could
it's my countenance. You can see, yeah. He's like, I can see that you've changed. Yeah, right? Like, I don't know what he read about me or what he found out. I don't know. I didn't join a gang. I didn't get any fights or write-ups. Yeah. I punched one person while I was in prison, but it wasn't like a big deal. It wasn't a super angry thing. Because a dude tickled me, and I've changed. I've changed, and he saw it. And he was like, how would you like to go into intense supervised probation? I was like, what, get out of prison? He's like, yeah, and get out of prison. I was like, yeah, I little anxiety here because I was like, it's too good to be true. It's too good to be true. And I just surrendered this, but now it's like bringing this all back up. And I'm like, yes, but like, is this you showing up here? I'm like, because my faith muscle's still not super strong. And I'm like, God's showing up again. And he showed up again and they let me out. They didn't let me out into that program. They put me into a specialty drug court program called Heals Court for the thing. They progressed me as an experiment into a 2-year drug court program. And they let me out after being in the county jail for 2 months since I'd come back from prison.
But did you do the 2-year program?
Oh, yeah. I got out and did this 2-year program. And so I did the 2-year program. I got out. I had a bunch of people in my community trying to help me. I got involved with a local organization called the Phoenix. They do free stuff for people that are sober, like free events. That's where I started getting my fitness back and my working out stuff. I got a job. I did landscape for like a month or two, and then I got laid off. And a lot of the people that got laid off went in cussing the boss out. And I went in and I was like, bro, thank you. You giving me this job helped with my transition out of the Department of Corrections. And I didn't come in there being a jerk or nothing. I just thanked him and left. And then I ended up getting a job at a place called Peaks Recovery Centers, getting into the recovery like field working. It was like a 12-step. The job, I'm going to tell you, it got my foot in the door for recovery, but like the job itself that I was doing, it was terrible. It was very difficult. It was driving lots of people all over the place, vans and this and that, and trying to but I was helping people. And
so back up a second.
yeah,
Your original sentence was for 14 years?
it was for 12.
Okay, so your original sentence was 12
Yep.
from the time you went into the time you're getting out. How long did you serve?
It's a little under a year and a half. Yeah, God showed up. He showed up. He showed up
Do you to this day know why that happened?
because of God. That's all I could give it credit for. I don't know because he
answer.
yeah he worked with me through the whole thing. That's something so big that I can't take credit for. I mean, like the only thing I can do is at that point I had chose to start listening to him. And I think he saw that. I feel like that wherever God was at, wherever I was before, the version of Dan that needed to be in prison became something. And God said, okay, now you're ready. You can go out. And not only can you go out, but he starts to give me this calling.
You don't know how this happens.
Don't know how this happens. It's God.
But we're going to say it's God.
We're going to say it's God
Yeah.
because to anything else, I couldn't tell you. Like this doesn't happen for people often.
What does Dan do?
So what Dan does then is Dan starts doing this job. Dan starts working out again. When I get out, okay, I had to start over. They were like, you can go to a sober living house. I have no money. I'm 31 years old, broke, nothing. They're like, no, we'll let you live with your parents. 31, moved back in with my parents. I felt kind of like, I didn't really feel ashamed, but I was all like, it was like, we're going to get my butt in gear here and we're going to go make some life happen because I'm about to catch back up and get whatever that looks like for me. So ended up working at Peaks Recovery Centers, really into the fitness. Then I ended up working for the Phoenix for about 4 years. Ended up for the most part taking over the chapter here. It's like a sober active community, had a lot of love for them. And then a couple more years ago, Peaks Recovery stole me back. But like in between, so I work there right now. I'm the activities and movement director. I help bring I use fitness and like somatic work and stuff like that to help people because that's one of the gifts that God gave me to help me that really started to build my confidence again.
Makes sense. And I think it's different for a man than it is a woman, wouldn't you say?
I think so.
I just think you guys are like, God made you to want to be strong. God made you to want to have that whole conquer thing.
Yes.
I love how he was using that for you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, because I like doing physically active stuff. I believe, I'm not going to say violence is a virtue, but like it kind of is for me. And not in the fact that I want to hurt people. It's like I love martial arts and fighting and combat stuff. I don't really watch a lot of it. I watch my buddies who fight. I want to master the art of destruction so that I can use it to preserve. And I know Bruce Lee made this. He didn't, it's not his quote, but he said, I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. And so I thought about that. So I started when I got out, I started doing CrossFit and I'm lifting weights and I ended up getting back into, I'm a 2nd degree black belt in Shaolin Kung Fu. I've been boxing for 4 years and I'm pretty new. I'm fairly new, but I do catch wrestling and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm newer at those. Like boxing, I can get in there and do pretty well, but like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's like if we're not punching, they're going to twist me into a pretzel and I'm okay with that because I get to learn. So that's what I'm doing now, physical stuff. And now when you walk in my living room door, like on the right side, there's this thing, there's one of those pictures and it says, I finally have all the things I prayed for. Yeah. And like, while I don't ever believe in being stagnant or stopping growing, I can say that. But now like the way I can impact other people's lives, this is where the calling starts to come in. And my son, about a month ago, it was his 5th birthday. And we had the little 5 candle on his cake. And he's got long hair. He's like, I want to be a Treyu. He's like a Treyu. He's a little warrior. I love him. He blows out his candle. And my wife goes, what was your wish, buddy? And he's like, I wish I was a real warrior like Daddy.
Ooh.
So.
That's huge. Wow. That just comes total full circle.
Full circle. So I'm like, not only did my priorities shift, I'm like, buddy, I got you. We've been doing jujitsu together for about 5 months and I'm teaching him boxing. But like it changed the priority of like, how does a man show up for his son? How do I show up and teach him? Because I don't want him to feel like we don't feel our emotions. No, I'm not like that. I mean, almost crying right now. It's backing off a little bit, but like he needs to know that it's okay to feel your emotions and
absolutely.
And I want him to know like this is like I'll cuss sometimes. I'll say a word will slip out and he'll look at me and be like, Daddy, you're a hero, a good guy, and a warrior, and heroes don't talk like that. And I'm like, my dude, and I dap him up. I'm like, you're my dude. Yeah, he's calling me out. And I'm like, I love that. So I'm trying to teach him physically, like spiritually, like we pray before we go to school, like on all levels, like what it is, what a warrior is, what a man is, what it means to be true to your word, what it is to show up for people weaker than you, what it is to be able to feel your feelings and how, and like, so that's one of my goals. Like I said at the beginning of this, like when a child's young and you teach him, when he grows up, he won't depart from it. Now it's my responsibility to do that for him and for my little daughter.
Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
Sounds like your dad did that for you.
He did.
So your dad did that for you.
Yes.
You're now doing that for your son.
Yes.
But you really fell off the wagon.
I sure did.
All part of your testimony.
Yeah.
Does it ever cross your mind, like what happens if my son follows in my footsteps?
It does. But then it's like, I believe that whatever his story is, he'll come back. But I also believe that could have been the beginning, the end, part of a generational curse that it's broken in Jesus' name.
Right.
And I know that he's going to go through hard stuff. And I want him to go through hard stuff. And that's going to be difficult to watch him go through hard stuff. But going through hard stuff and challenges is what builds people. Yeah. It's what builds warriors. It's what builds strength.
So I got a lot of really big questions for you. Do you want to wrap that? I want to make sure that, again, this is your testimony, Dan.
Yeah.
But how you look at it right now.
Yeah.
I can sit in this chair and observe it.
Yeah.
Is there anything more to this testimony?
I just want to say that I'm grateful for my family. I have my stepdaughter and Jacob, who we've got guardianship of. He was in a really rough spot when he was 10 and now he's 16. God's put some people in my life that I'm responsible for, and I haven't done a good job sometimes with being responsible for these humans that are younger. And that's the thing I'm working on. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for, like, I go to the Sanctuary Church. I do the recovery leadership there. And in a minute, I'd love to talk about some of the ministries I'm involved with. But
what's on your shirt? Tell me about this ministry.
Oh, so this is the Bridge. This is my buddy Matt Clovis and I, about a year and a half ago, and we're slow moving. We started the Bridge. What it is it's a transitional, people getting out of prison. Like, I took him down to Trinidad. He was having a rough time. We went down to the Trinidad Correctional Facility. I can go back in the prisons now. I actually have a volunteer state badge where I can go in the facilities and like work out with the guys. And he was my buddy Matt was having a rough spot in his life. And I was like, hey man, why don't you just go down and work out with me? So I took him down to the Trinidad Correctional Facility to show him the culture and how these guys work out. And he's like, this is magical. But he's like, Dan, the fitness communities out here aren't like what they had in there. Right. And so I was like, yeah, dude, I mentor guys getting out and I teach them and show them and try to help them. And oftentimes it works and it helps them, but sometimes it doesn't. And that's okay. But he was like, why don't we start an organization to make it more impactful to serve more people?
But in essence, you're doing what was done for you.
Exactly.
When you were in prison.
Exactly. Something that worked for me that I know is going to work for somebody else. So what we do is we're going to start working with like case management when we have people getting out. And right now it's only in Colorado Springs, but like it'll probably expand. We'll see what God takes it. But when they get out, we're in the final stages of our provisional licensure to be able to bill Medicaid for recovery support services for peer recovery coaches. And we are very, very ethical with how we're doing this peer coach thing, because there's some places that are kind of like making the ride look bad, if you will. Yeah. But like the whole idea is we have people from the community, kind of a restorative justice model. I like restorative justice with like prisons, but not, I'm 50-50 on it with like high schools and stuff, but we won't get into that. But like the restorative justice model talks about how like when the community, the victims and the offenders kind of work together for healing, so that all parties can be healed. So we're kind of trying to do that with these guys. So if I have me who's successfully gotten out of prison, I have a person getting out. Their getting out's going to look different with mine, but we have this in common. We've been there and we've got out. So we're going to have coach mentors helping them get out. One of the ways that we do that is we do physical stuff. We do CrossFit, we do boxing. We just started like an indoor, it's like training you how to be a rock climber. And there's like this whole program that our buddy Pablo is putting together for it. We're doing weightlifting at Grid Athletics with my buddy Ryan Parr. Love him, man of God, amazing human being. I love his gym. It's down in the Lincoln Center. We're partnering with Parole. We're approved by the Department of Corrections. I tried to get other things approved by DOC before, but Matt's not a convicted felon and he was able to, but like getting the DOC approval, it was like God just made it happen. So we're working with people, helping them get out. Fitness and recovery, leadership, mentorship. John Maxwell is one of my absolute favorite speakers, leaders, everything about him of all time. And the whole thing is we're going and talking to these people and showing that we have common ground. And I know that John Maxwell, I think this was a Theodore Roosevelt quote, but he says, people don't care to know until they know that you care. And that's what I'm trying to show people. Like, I care about you. I want to help you. Let's get out of prison. Let's not go back.
How do people find your organization?
So right now it's on social media. We're working on the website right now. Our website, thebridge.life. It's just a donation page.
I'm going to link you in my description box too.
Cool.
For your testimony, yeah. So it'll be in the description box.
Awesome. Yeah. Soon it'll be a website. We have our buddies helping us get the ideas together. Very soon it'll be a website. And there's that. And then we're also on social media. Instagram and Facebook, The Bridge. We'll post updates about our events. We'll share like reels and leadership stuff and goofy stuff and like fitness coaching tips. And
okay, so here's a big question I have for you.
Yes.
There's so many people that have walked the path that you just shared, right?
Yeah.
Drugs, addiction, alcohol,
yeah,
prison. Rebellion, insecurity.
Yes.
What percent of people do you think come to the side that you did?
Very few. I'm going to tell you that 2% of people that have used methamphetamine for a long time, only 2% of those people ever don't use again.
That is too low, 2%?
It's too low.
Why is it so low?
I don't know. I think what it would have to be is like while the withdrawal symptoms of methamphetamine are low, like it spikes your dopamine so much, it makes it so hard to come back from it. And like they say, like statistically at a treatment center, 1 to 2 out of the 10 people that go through there are going to make it to a year sober. You know, and then like those are there could be other statistics for like after and then ultimately people do get sober and how many times they go through treatment. But I know people that have gone through treatments 20 times and are still not sober. I know people that have gone to treatment once and they got it.
Hey, and if I'm listening to your testimony right now,
yeah,
I would say I'm going to be the 2%.
Let's go. That's right. That's exactly right.
My question then is, can I have so many? Why is this your outcome? Why doesn't everybody get this outcome? You think, I mean, obviously God knows our hearts.
Yeah.
Right? And this is for someone who may be listening that has God in their life or doesn't.
Yeah.
Like, what do you say to that person that is walking your exact walk?
I'd say keep fighting. Find what it is you are holding on to that you're not giving God. Find your surrender. Because whatever it is that you're holding on to, that fear, that anger, whatever that is, when you let go of that, my faith muscle is built enough where I can confidently say, once you release that, God will replace that. He will put something better in your hand.
If you enjoyed this episode of Gritty Glory, I'd be grateful for you to subscribe, like, and share so we can get this out to as many people who need to hear it.